All right, we need to talk about what's going on in Iran and why it's pretty scary. If you haven't heard, a couple days ago there were some explosions in some Saudi Arabian oil refineries. I guess half of their production was affected. It will take months to get it repaired, and it is looking like these were attacks connected to Iran. The story is they used drones and even maybe a few cruise missiles, is what the latest news is saying, from the Iranians or their direction towards Saudi Arabian oil fields, which are about as soft a target as they come. And this is scary. This is a pretty scary situation, but it doesn't seem like people are worried or people are aware or people really know what is going on. So this should worry you. I don't know if it should scare you, but it definitely should worry you, because this is the Middle East. This is a conflict again involving oil, involving Iran, a nuclear, if not yet, soon to be, maybe possibly nuclear power, with a lot of enemies in, of course, a hostile part of the world. So this has all the makings of kind of maybe a Persian Gulf War 2.0, right? If you remember, back in the 90s, Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. Kuwait didn't have a lot of oil production, but it gave them access to the Persian Gulf, and it put Saudi Arabian oil fields directly under threat. The worry was that Saddam would then push into Saudi Arabia and take all that oil for himself. The United States, of course, responded. We had a policy at the time, I'm assuming it's still in effect today, that if access to oil was under threat, that we would go to war. So that's what happened in the 90s, and we know how that played out. So again, oil is under threat, and you need to have oil to function. If half of Saudi Arabia's oil is nicked, that's could be a big monkey wrench in the world economy, because so many places depend on this now. I'm rambling. Why should we care? Okay, a couple things. If the oil is affected that badly, and you have a huge spike in oil prices, which we're seeing right now, going up to $100, maybe even more per barrel, according to the news today, it could plunge a shaky economy. That could plunge us into global recession. That could be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Recession, the downturn is coming sooner or later. Everybody knows it. Can't go up forever. The economy's growing. It's got to take a downturn sooner or later, and this could start that. This could have a big, I know, a lot of countries get oil from Saudi Arabia, not just the United States, but China and stuff. And so if their economy's affected, that can ripple and affect everybody else as well. Again, you've had a lot of wars in the Middle East over oil in the past. Like I said, Persian Gulf War, of course. You've had a lot of wars in general started over shipping rights, right? And freedom of the seas. You'd be amazed how many wars start on the ocean. And on top of these attacks, or this attack, Iran has been in the past couple months pretty aggressively seizing and taking over oil tankers. They even had some commandos with a head cam, like kind of live stream a helicopter assault. You can watch it on YouTube as they kind of hijack, seize, take over a oil tanker. They've held some crews hostage. This doesn't get a lot of play in the news. I don't know if it's not that big a deal, but Iran is hijacking oil shipments. Iran will say this is like smuggled or illegal oil, which I have no doubt that could be. A lot of shady things happen, I know, with shipping and oil and stuff like that. But still, that's not a good thing. They shot down an American drone about a month and a half ago. And Trump, I guess, was on the verge of launching punitive strikes against Iran to as punishment or correction. And I guess at the last minute, pulled back, according to his tweets. But had we fired in shots into Iran, who knows what would have happened. So, another time we got close to war. But again, you have all the makings of a major conflict here. Again, a lot of wars, but if what we're hearing is true, okay? So grain of salt, right? I'm a little older and wiser now, and you want to believe that it's the Iranians responsible for this, or it's easy to pin the blame on them. But historical precedent should tell us we should be a little worried, right? Of course, Vietnam, Gulf of Tonkin resolution, right? We got into that whole. We were already involved, but that really sped up American involvement when reports came out an American ship was torpedoed. I mean, there were no explosions. The attack actually never really happened, we think now. But someone on the sonar recorded some torpedo attacks coming towards the ship. This was seen as an act of war. Vietnam kept saying, we didn't do this. We're not responsible. We did not authorize this attack. But too little, too late. Rush off to war. But probably, again, like I said, this attack never happened. The Iraq invasion after September 11, 2003. Iraq had chemical, biological weapons. That was a threat. We need to go and wipe that out. Turns out, 2020 hindsight, oops. Iraq has no nuclear chemical capability. So that was a whole thing that we got involved in a war for false pretenses. Even Saddam thought he had the capability. That's a weird situation. Spanish-American War, the sinking of this happens all the time. So I do have a little bit of a doubt as to, did Iran really do this? The attacks obviously happened. That can't be denied, but is Iran really responsible? Were these hardliners in the Iranian government? Was it a terrorist organization? Was it a group of rebels? The whole part of the world there is so screwed up, it could be anything is at play, right? So we should be careful. We should be careful if we just take the headlines at face value, because that's not always the case. But again, if it is, you can't let this slide, right? Iran is acting very, very kind of out of control. I don't see Iran's play in this. Obviously, they're upset when Trump pulled out of the nuclear deal. And I know from some stories I've read and listened to that there's some division in the Iranian government. You got the hardliners that seem to be taking the lead right now, who are really pushing towards antagonization and pushing towards conflict and taking a hard line with the United States and its policies because they think it gives Iran an advantage or to save face, or maybe they want conflict because they think they can win. I'm not worried about Iran, militarily. I don't think anybody is. But it's just a situation of if they go down, who are they going to take with them? And because of the proximity of their closeness to other Middle Eastern countries, they could take out quite a bit. So that is worrisome. But again, I don't see why they want to bring the roof down on their heads. Maybe this was, again, not part of their plan, but there's forces that have grown out of their control, and now they have to face the consequences. Are we going to go to war with Iran? I don't think so. This is weird. This is the war that nobody wants, which sounds strange, right? Who wants to go to war? Well, there's a lot of hawks usually that want conflict. Anyway, but Iran doesn't want this. Trump has an election coming up. He definitely doesn't want this. This is not going to be good for the economy. This is not going to be good for his election chances. Not a good look, dragging the country into another very messy war again in the Middle East. What, third time in 25 years? So Trump doesn't want this at all. Peculiar, Trump fired his national security advisor, Michael Bolton, mustache, the Quaker Oats looking guy, just a couple days ago, who was a hawk, who was a hardliner. Had he been in office now, I'm sure would be taking a lot more aggressive stance toward Iran and all this. But now that he's gone, that kind of is a signal that Trump was wanting to maybe take a softer approach to things. So maybe that has an effect on this. Just yesterday, I saw news that Trump granted access to our strategic oil reserves, right? So for years, there's like these huge underground caverns in like Texas and stuff. And we just have filled these up with oil to use in case of emergency. That's the idea, right? In case there's a huge conflict, access to oil is cut off. United States, we have a stockpile of oil that we can use to make sure that we can keep our economy functioning and life kind of goes on here as normal. Only for emergencies, and Trump has granted access to that now. That should signal something, right? If this is a big deal. This is not going to be over quickly, and there could be some long-term consequences. So that should be kind of a red flag if we're tapping into that oil supply. There's something. The White House is worried, so that should be kind of a worrisome thing. But people really don't seem to be worried. Do people not want the war so bad? Are we going to find another resolution? Is this just, are we heading towards cruise missile diplomacy? We're not doing an invasion. I hope boots on the ground would be a terrible decision. So is this just airstrikes are imminent? Back what we did in the 90s. If we don't like somebody, we slap their hand with some cruise missiles, send them a message. Is this brinksmanship? Are we just going to go right to the edge and then last minute, maybe this will lead to some talks. Maybe that's what Iran's trying to do, escalate, because they know that nobody wants a war. And like, well, now that we got you in this position, here's a way we can go back to the negotiation table. That maybe makes sense, but it seems really risky. But like I said, nobody really seems too terribly worried yet. But we're still waiting to see how Saudi Arabia, the United States, and the West responds. So that will, that could change things drastically. If we don't respond, that's a response in itself, which would just make Iran more bold and could lead to more escalation on, well, if this doesn't get a reaction, just like a spoiled kid, what are you going to do? You're going to have to ramp things up. So it's a messy situation. And I don't know where this goes. Like I said, it has all the makings of a major conflict, but it doesn't feel like a major conflict yet. I don't think we're at the point of no return. We're probably far away. But, if another attack was to hit the oil fields, then it's like, again, well, what can you do, right? Once you could maybe say was a mistake or a one-of or a whatever, accident or whatever. But if it happens twice, then that's a pattern, right? This is a strategy. This it's going to keep going. Then and there's going to be a third time and a fourth time, and then all that oil is gone, and that's a huge. We don't want to admit, but that's a huge problem. Maybe it's not a big deal because this isn't the 90s anymore. The United States is an oil exporter, not an importer, right? Our oil production has gone way, way up. The balance of power has shifted. We're not so dependent on Saudi Arabian oil anymore. So maybe that's why we can take maybe a less aggressive stance. That has thank goodness we are in that position, because if we weren't, no pun intended, we would totally be over a barrel right now, and we would have to have some kind of response. So maybe having some energy independence is giving us some more room to breathe. I mean, definitely so. That's what it seems like right now. even though we're tapping into the oil reserves. We produce so much oil ourselves now that we're kind of maybe we're insulated from this. It's kind of wait and see, I guess. This video is going a little bit long. I'll wrap it up. But keep an eye on the news and what happens. Right now, I mean, anything's in play. We could see another attack. We could see a response. I don't know if any more embargoes are going to have an effect on Iran. They're pretty much embargoed to the hilt. A response now is going to have to be military in some way, I would assume. I guarantee you we're moving a lot of assets into them. We already have a lot already, but we're probably shifting a lot more there just in case, and tighten the noose around Iran. And if they sneeze, we will see it, and that will get some kind of response. So we'll be there to say gazoon tight and make sure that they know. So like I said, we will see what happens. But interesting times, interesting situation. And like I said, historically, this has all the makings of a huge conflict. But for some reason, we don't seem to be there yet. But we could be very, very close. But this is a war that nobody wants. And hopefully that's cooler heads prevail and we find a way out of this. But Iran seems to be acting like a rabid dog as of late. And sometimes if a dog goes mad, you got to put it down. And we may be hitting that situation. I don't know. We will see. So that's it for today. My thoughts. Historically, this is not looking good. But history does not repeat. That's a fallacy. It does not repeat exact. It does rhyme, and so we're seeing some rhyming going on here. So it's a little bit similar, but also a little bit different than before. So we will see what happens. Anyway, I gotta go. I got stuff to do. I know you do too, and I'll catch you later. Bye.